hate is it something that's part of nature? Is it a good thing? Does it have a benefit? Is it part of like an evolutionary byproduct? Is it the difference between good and evil? What is hate? Because most of us, what we're taught about hate is that it's bad and you shouldn't do it. And it's villains in movies. It's the core of the bad guy, and it's usually explored in kind of more tropes, movies, books, TV shows, and perceptions to reinforce negative stereotypes. And you learn this from a young age, as part of the stories that we learn as a child and the movies and the entertainment that we consume, family teachings, part of life. You just kind of something you learn. The idea is, though, is that hate is probably far more persuasive and it has far deeper roots than we think. And when we're talking about hate, and especially it's talked about far more in the modern world and today and in the Western world, is that one way to look at it is what we're talking about as hate that we see today in media is more the most visceral, vicious extension of the hate plant, as it were. That's the top of the flowers, right? It's the most visible, noticeable thing, but that it goes all the way down deep, deep, deep into our roots and our society, and it has a strong aspect and tie to how we function. And that just it would be like only calling the flower is a standalone thing and not part of the plant. It's all part of a system. And so what I'm suggesting is that some people might think of, hey, love and hate. Hate is opposite love. That's not true. That's the understanding. That's the basic idea of what you think maybe love is from the societal standpoint that they're opposites of each other, but they're not. Love isn't being engaged. Opposite of love is lack of engagement. Hate is something else. When I had said that how love and hate are related are that love is acceptance of things as they are, being able to allow them to be. You don't need to create constructs. You don't need to do things. You don't have to do anything special. Just it is what it is. That's the start of love, right? The start of hate is you can't. You can't have that be what it is. That thing is a threat to how you model the world. Doesn't matter when it's a literal threat, like a snake or something is attacking you, versus a psychological threat. That is why people can act so viciously when they're just saying words to each other. That's why when you look at some of these arguments and maybe you don't agree with either side and you think of it as nonsense, but you see two people who would literally almost go to physical altercation. It's because in their mind, there is no difference. Their math shows no difference. And this thing that's opposite them cannot exist. Versus somebody who is loving, this thing can be whatever it is. That's the starting point. Love is it glues you to the other people. It gives you reinforcement to intimacy and trust and allows you to have working relationships as a social animal that are deep and long term. That's what full on love is. That's the flowers of love. The whole plan of it is that it's acceptance. It's accepting things for what they are, not needing them. And by needing, I mean like that your construct, how you would actually literally embody, feel anxiety, need it to be a certain way. That will not generate because you do not need it to be a certain way. You can allow it to be what it is. And at the highest levels, even dangerous stuff. That's like when you're talking about Buddhists who are able to deal with the ideas of death and a lot of these scarier notions is because of the exposure, they no longer generate the fear because they no longer model the fear in it. We can do that on small scale for ourselves. Hate prohibits that. Hate is what stops us, or is part the roots of hate, or what stop us from being able to love. So for me, that was my problem. That was the thing I had to unlearn, was that I needed certain things to be a certain way to be comfortable. If I didn't allow that, one of the constructs to protect me from that thing and not deal with it was hate. I didn't like this guy. This person made me look stupid. Whatever it was, I could then construct this guy's an asshole. Fuck this guy. And then it would change my life. People who didn't think, when I said fuck this guy, who didn't agree with me, they were no longer my friends. People who said, yeah, fuck this guy, then all of a sudden, whoever they were more apt to become my friends. This is how we shape ourselves and our identity through echo chambers. We don't even realize it, but it's all part of the error signal. the reinforcement through love, or the protection of the vulnerability through hate. These are the constructs that define us without even knowing. And we only think about them as in fucking Cruella de Vil and Disney movies, and that we need to find love through a fucking app and other horseshit that is sold to us, versus it being free and literally more within us than within the other person. But you're not taught that. There's reason. You right now, intellectually, if you have been paying attention and are willing and are really taking in what I'm talking about, and you have that embodied sense of what I'm saying, you're about to cross a bridge. A bridge that there is no real turning back from, meaning that once you understand this, you can't ununderstand it. You can't completely unlearn it without creating another construct to offset it, like hate. So this is the one and only little warning. But once we move over and you accept that love is acceptance, and the roots or love's roots are acceptance, the flowers are us in our relationships with each other, and that hate, the flowers are the divisiveness that we see, the hate crimes, the swastikas, the guy on a lawn with a burning cross. We think of that as hate. We think of it as systemic. We think of it as hidden in our institutions. But its actual roots are far deeper and far more intertwined into our societies and our lives than we know. And it starts, the seed of hate is needing something to be what it is not. And by need, I mean in your model, that has to be that way. And if you can't deal with that, you create the construct. One of the avenues is to create the construct of hate. And because it's not true in the real world. One of the easiest ways to prove that it's true is to have other people agree with you. These echo chambers that we create that help perpetuate myth and create connection, because humans desire connection. That's not weakness. That's part of our fundamental nature. But we miss that because we don't think of hate in that way. We don't look at love and hate against the context of an actual way in which we work, a consciousness. Why we feel things, why we feel a physical sensation of love. I think it was Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett when she talked about how she struggled one time with a date with somebody. She didn't know if she liked them, and it turns out she had the stomach flu, and she couldn't tell that the butterflies in her stomachs or what have you were associated with being sick versus the date. And that, well, again, these things are constructed. These ideas, our notions are constructed. We create them. Hate is one of those things. Our notions of what we believe love to be. But if we pour down and we see the difference of our life and how we're experiencing and how we're sharing love versus what it should be, you'll see differences. Maybe it'll make you feel uncomfortable. But that's the point. What do you do with that? With that discomfort, do you make a construction? Do you say this person is wrong? Do you turn off the signal? Do you say this guy's an asshole? Because you're literally enacting what we're talking about. That's the point. We operate in a way that is actually really distinguishable when we allow ourselves to take pause and notice. It's actually fucking scary obvious. One of the first year of my of getting into this, it was so hard for me. I got upset so often because I felt so fucking stupid. Like it's like figuring out when you're playing a game with somebody and they have a tell, and you could have been ruling the fucking game for years, but you weren't. And you know how I got better? I learned to let that go. That is what it is. I learned from it. I implement it. And now those lessons are part of me. If I still lived in a narrative, I could beat myself up about it, but I'd be wasting tons of energy. And I'd be rehashing the same old tricks that did not help me as much as I thought they would. And it goes to the roots of love, acceptance, caring, compassion, caring about something for not in spite of its imperfections, but maybe because of them. Perishing living things, because they're amazing. That sensation comes from acceptance. That doesn't come from mantras. That doesn't come from a kale diet. That doesn't come from just running a couple miles a day. Physical activity helps. But these things that we just act like there's simple answers out there. It's how we think. It's how we live. It's the models we build that make us. And hate is one of the biggest problems because or hate is a big problem because not only does it inhibit love, it's like a psychological drug that offsets and replaces love. It makes you feel comfortable. It's empowering. It, the act of covering up that vulnerability with this armor is psychologically empowering. And because we're embodied creatures, we can have physical sensations. That's why we can enjoy ruminating on negative things. We're literally taking a psychological hit of our narrative. This guy's getting hurt. I'm looking powerful. Or I'm getting hurt, but I'm in control and I can see it. And any other number of things, including fearful and awful things, because they're almost like thrill rides. You're able to examine it at close inspection and we become habit to it because we don't pause. We don't hit the brakes. We don't stop. We don't allow ourselves to think. And in order to prevent ourselves from even going down that path, we blind ourselves with social media, constant content. Every waking moment. God forbid you have 15 minutes of your self-quiet time any given moment. For many people, that'd be torture. But it comes down to accepting. If you don't need things to be a certain way, you don't fear them when they're not. And if you don't fear them when they're not, you don't hate them because they can just be what they are. But hate is a hell of a drug. It's like cocaine, man. It makes you feel powerful. It can help alleviate that sensation of lack of power, of disempowerment, of vulnerability, of fear.